Welcome to Chief Everything Officer, a podcast for entrepreneurs who do it all. We are sponsored by Juntobot, an impact-oriented venture school and studio focused on designing and scaling startup ecosystems for the future.
Greetings and welcome to the Chief Everything Officer podcast. I'm your host, Devin Voorsanger, and today we have Lorine Pendleton, lead partner of the Portfolia Rising America Fund, a good friend of Juntobot, a good friend of mine, and just somebody that I'm just thrilled to be able to count as somebody that will answer my phone calls. I'm going to let her introduce herself because she can do it 100 times better than I can, but Lorine, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Devin. It's really great to see you. It's been a while.
Yes.
Right. So I'm Lorine Pendleton, as Devin mentioned. I am lead partner for Portfolia Rising America Fund 1 and 2, which is actually a VC fund. We are actually the first VC fund led by a team of all Black and Latina women, first time ever in the country, and a really, kick butt team of women, and I'm proud to be a part of that fund, which we launched in 2019, Fund 1, and then went on to launch our Fund 2 about a year and a half ago, and still have some money left in that fund, which we're deploying. So that's me.
Amazing. So, one of the things I find as I go through this journey and I talk to people at different levels and different points in their career, and as I'm at different points in my career, there's a point where I would never even recognize who I am today 20 years ago. I just would have looked at that guy and been like, who is that guy? and I'm always curious about people's journey to where they got to today, because I'm trying to raise my own fund at this point, and I'm, and that was not something that I would have ever even thought was possible. But through conversations with you and other people in the industry who've been really supportive of me and understanding, I've been able to get the confidence to be able to say, actually, this is something I can do. Mm-hmm. But how did that journey happen for you? Where did you, how did you get your start? How did you arrive at where you are today?
Yeah, so really great question. I did not in a million years imagine that I would be a VC investing in early stage companies. I actually started out, I'll go way back. I started out actually born and raised in Harlem until I was 10. Both my parents are Harlemites. They were born and raised in Harlem, came from very humble beginnings. Mm-hmm. My dad went to college, put himself through actually City College, which you're familiar with, in Harlem. And that's how you and I met. And then went to NYU, worked at big companies, Exxon, IBM, and then ended up starting his own computer consulting company, invested in real estate. So I grew up in Harlem, really great formative part of my life, the first 10 years. And then my parents moved just outside of the city in New Jersey in a town called Teaneck. So I went from being in an environment which was predominantly Black, to, actually it was pretty much all Black. I mean, now it's more gentrified, but then it was completely all Black. And then ended up moving to Teaneck, which was really interesting. Incredibly diverse community. You had all kinds of people, Blacks. It's heavy. A lot of Jewish people live in Teaneck. So my neighbors was to the left was a Jewish family. To the right was actually a biracial Black and white family couple. We had a Jordanian family. They were from the Middle East. We had the Chews who lived down the block. They were Asian. And so that was my block. So truly a melting pot. And so it was a really great experience for me. And so, typical kid, I, really thrived, played sports, played basketball, ran track, but focused on academic. That was one thing that my parents really instilled in me and my brothers, is that, education is really key. My dad saw how him getting educated got him out of poverty and got him out of Harlem. And so that was really what my parents focused on. And my dad would always say to me, well, one of the things he said is having, just always your reputation is so really, really important. You can make money, you can lose money. But if you have a good reputation and you're an honest person, and you have integrity, you'll always be able, people will, if they like you, they'll help you. But if you're not like that, money can come and go basically. And so you can earn money, you can lose money. But, so those were like kind of things that was still to me: education, being an honest person, being a hard worker. So, went through TNEC. It was a great experience growing up in New Jersey. And I ended up getting into Brown University, got into an Ivy League in Rhode Island. And it was just a really great experience for me. As much as Brown is very rigorous in terms of academics, but also they really select the student body who they want to be at that university. And I met some really incredible people. And it was just really, really a great experience for me. Yeah. So
it's interesting because I can't remember who told me this, but somebody told me that you will either shine in high school or you shine in college. And I think they were kind of trying to tell me that it's okay that I was failing at high school. I'd be fine once I got to college. But they said you'll either shine in high school or you'll shine in college. And I can't tell you how many people I've met who have built their careers off of what they learned in high school or built their careers off of what they learned in college. Like their formative years were either one or the other. So it's like this Brown experience sounds like it's an incredibly formative experience for you.
Yeah, I mean, I had a great experience in high school. It was just like Brown was just magnified, right? It's just, it was on a whole other level. And, TNEC was great. It was a great transition from Harlem to TNEC and like being around all kinds of people. And then Brown just magnified that, like, so on an international scale, like just, students from all around the world. Kind of a fun fact. We call them units. These are like your floor, whoever's on your dorm floor. And in my freshman unit, we were kind of like, we were far off on like the other end of the campus. And so we got to know each other really well. And one of the people who was in my unit was Darakash Shahi, who was a former CEO of Expedia, now is the CEO of Uber. And he's really interesting. He was he's Iranian. And he actually left the country when the Shah was overthrown. He was actually on vacation and never went home. And so he would tell us stories about that, and he ended up moving to United States, and and he shared those stories, and we would be up late at night, friends of my freshman year, talking about those things. And so I got to meet people who were international, who had a different perspective, but yet as much as they were quote unquote different, there's a commonality amongst us. And so those are like things that I fondly remember. So it was like magnified at Brown, just the exposure to all kinds of people, and that I didn't have in high school. It was just a different, I guess that international part of it was the part that was really a new thing for me.
My uncle worked at I Am Pay. They were building stuff during the fall of when the fall of the Shah happened, and they ended up adopting 2 orphans who obviously became my cousins. And being exposed to a different cultural background at that early age. I mean, I just grew up with my cousin, and he just happens to be Persian, and his sister happens to be Persian. And as an 8-year-old, you just don't question it.
No, and we
were the same size, so I was able to beat him up like one out of every other time. He is now like 7'2". I mean, he's enormous. He's like Andre the Giant enormous. He's a cardiologist on the West Coast. Every time I see him, I have at least 3 photos, and keep in mind that we're significantly older now, where he's beating me up. He's got me in a headlock. He's giving me a noogie. It's like, but it's really fascinating because the concept of other as something that separate from you disappears when you have more exposure to different cultures. And I think that's one of the main things about college is exposure to those different communities,
That's the point, is exposure, and we can double click on that later, but I think that's really, fundamentally is what is important, is having exposure. And so as much as people like to paint a picture that we're so different, in a lot of ways we're not. I mean, we're very similar. People fundamentally want to provide, a roof over their head for their family, provide food, be able to, their family can eat, and want people to have their kids to have good education and be successful in life. I think regardless of what your background is and your ethnicity, your race, gender, I think everyone has that commonality. And of course you have outliers that don't want that, but people want that. And I think, so that was magnified for me. I think, leaving Harlem and going to TNEC and then being kind of supersized in college, just expanding my just network and just in terms of people I got to meet on an international who came from all around the world. And so that was really incredible.
Cool. So how did the journey from Brown to Portfolio happen? How did that?
Okay, so I'll give you a quick version. It was a lot too. So when I was at Brown, I ended up becoming, I was a radio DJ on our station. We had a college commercial station, and it was really great. And so, I majored in economics, minored in computer science. I thought I was going to go work for like a Microsoft or, kind of a tech company back then. But ended up, I love the radio. I love the entertainment industry. So I ended up getting out and I worked for Blue Note Records, is the jazz label for Capitol Records. So I started as an assistant at the very bottom, wasn't making a lot of money. So I lived with my parents and commuting from New Jersey into New York City, and but really great exposure to me. And then I ended up going to law school. At evening because I wanted to keep my entertainment contacts. I want to be an entertainment lawyer or just stay in entertainment. And so I did that. And, that was a 4-year program, actually left that label, went to join the William Morris agency, which is now Endeavor. But, William Morris was the largest and oldest talent agency. So think about Hollywood agents. We represented, well-known celebrities, whether they were film, television, recording artists, with touring, book authors. And so it was just a really great experience. When I graduated, I joined a small entertainment boutique firm, the Macmillan firm, led by Londo Macmillan. He's best known for getting Prince Albert agreement Warner Brothers. That happened prior to me joining the firm. He's, African-American attorney at the time. He was in his 30s, young guy, but, we had a really great roster of clients. So Prince, Shaka Khan, Stevie Wonder. We represented Rough Rider Records, which had signed Swiss, DMX, Eve. And so it was just an incredible.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I actually, fun fact, I was one of the lawyers for the very first hip hop tour that was ever held at an arena, like big venues. So,
wow.
I live in, New Jersey, tri-state area, the Meadowlands. That was a big arena. Like that's where, the Jets and Giants play football. Before that, hip hop tours were held in like small venues, clubs. And so we actually, it was the Hard Knock Life tour, Jay-Z and DMX, and they went to 15 cities. It kicked off in Raleigh, North Carolina. They went to the Meadowlands, so 15 cities. So as you can imagine, people were worried about hip hop and like, are they going to have guns? And so people had to go through metal detectors. They had to, do had security and all kinds of things. So yeah, I worked on my firm. We represented, Rough Rider Records, which had DMX. And so, and then Jay-Z was on, he had his attorneys. So I worked on that. So
weird intersectionality here. Weird intersectionality. So when I left NYU, I went to go be a international DJ.
Really?
And I was deep in the tech house scene for about 4 to 5 years. At a certain point, I realized I was basically not international, and I was borderline not really a DJ. At least if you asked any of my friends who were actual DJs whether I was any good and should be considered a DJ, they would have just been like, no. So I decided to leave that, but I had learned through that how to market stuff, how to organize people, how to communicate stuff, how to get people in a room, how to get, and I started my own advertising firm. And my first clients were Frankie Knuckles, Fly Leather, were, a bunch of my friends, DJs, and a bunch of, so I, but that's as far as I got. Though I did, and this is what I was triggered by, I was asked to sell sponsorships for a concert series. And I was trying to sell, and I didn't understand concerts and how they're put together. And they're basically like, so we don't have any of the talent and we don't have the venue, but I need you to sell sponsorships. And I'm like, so I have no product, but you want me to sell sponsorships? And they're like, yeah. and I was trying to sell sponsors, and I wasn't doing well. And I'm on this conference call. I'm like, I really would be helpful if I could tell them where it is or who the artist is. And they're like, no, but that's your job. And I'm like, no, dude, you don't understand. And this guy who I'd never heard of is like, yo, you don't understand. Either sell or get off the ticket. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Do you not understand sales? And I got in a huge argument. That was P. Diddy. I got fired by P. Diddy.
Yeah, we
got fired in like 10 minutes. 10 minutes of conference call, I was fired.
Yeah,
I was like,
work with P. Diddy and we got to talk about that offline. It's interesting.
Yeah. But that's the closest. Yeah.
It can happen.
And now we understand better why that was just accepted. But I had never worked that way before, and I was like,
right.
So.
Yeah.
So how did you transition from the music law and entertainment law to?
So this is like, I'm completely dating myself, but this was like really when the internet was just kind of coming out. And so one of the interesting things is when Prince got his agreement, Warner Brothers, he ended up, he was able to create his own music and distribute it. Crystal Ball was the album, and he basically had e-commerce and people could buy it. And he only did 500,000, and that actually at that time he made up for his, he didn't have to give the record label cut. And a lot of people think recording artists make a lot of money, but there's a whole, that's for another day, but most cases they don't. And part of what we were doing is getting our clients, who were like some of the best in the world, their fair share. And that was like what Londell was doing. And so I'm saying all this because it's an interesting thing, because it's similar to like kind of what I'm doing, like fast forward. And so it's all about like, these people who are creating content and are creative, but yet they're not getting paid what they need to get paid, or that kind of thing. So anyway, I saw the internet was just really coming out. MP3 was out. I knew, and because of my background, I had worked, I studied computer science in college. I was like, whoa, this is like going to be a disruptor. Like the internet is disrupting. MP3 is now disrupting, music, like digital music, where, I worked at record labels. People would send their little demo tapes and like hope to get to the A&R person who like listens to it, unless they don't get it, unless their manager knows them. And so all these people are creative, and yet it's like they have to know people in order to get, with the internet, I was like, this is going to be a disruptor. And sure enough, there was a company, it was actually an Israeli company, that had a technology that they were licensing entertainment companies. And I went out to dinner with a friend, and she had a friend who was like a recruiter there, and he was looking for someone to bring on to do business development for the startup. They had raised about $3 million from GE Capital, or GE Ventures actually. And he's like, you have the perfect background. You have the entertainment contacts. We were trying to sell our, products. So I met with them, and, they gave me equity, and it was a really interesting company. So really great company. We were a little bit ahead of our time. Now people use it, like in terms of the technology, what they were doing. And I tell people that was my first lesson, product market fit. We had a great product, great technology, but just we were too ahead of our time.
Don't feel bad. I mean, you look at Peapod, you look at Cosmo. I mean, for those people who are not as antique and ancient as us, Peapod was basically Fresh Direct, and Cosmo was insert every single delivery app you have.
Amazon, like all of that, right? And Cosmo was like an Amazon, like same day delivery, Wow.
I remember getting Ben and Jerry's 6-pack of beer to my office at 1 PM. And we were like, this is magic.
Yeah, I mean, who like now? Yeah, like wow, I never thought about that. You're absolutely right. So, but anyway, so that company folded. The technology sold to IBM. Then I was at this crossroads. I was like out of a job. Do I go back to like practicing, or do I continue on this whole internet startup? I decided the latter. So I joined a company called Community Connect, which was actually one of the first social media companies. We had Black Planet, Asian Avenue, Mahente. So we had, think of Facebook. Facebook had not even existed yet. Zuckerberg probably was in high school. Basically we had social media sites focus on people's ethnicity, but they could connect, they could post stuff, they could connect with people. We launched our dating site, but it was all like based on, ethnicity, your race or ethnicity. That company, Black Planet was the first social media company ever to hit over 1 million users. And so that's a really cool fun fact. And really great. I did sales, business development sales, bringing in advertisers, had to convince them that people of color was online.
Yeah.
This is literally online. We have, Black Planet has about 2 million, unique visitors per month that they use the internet. And, it's just so funny now because it's, wouldn't even have this conversation.
I remember selling online advertising, and I called up Circuit City, the head of marketing for Circuit City. And I was like, I want to talk to you about online marketing. He's like, I would never advertise online. Internet is a fad. This is ridiculous. You'll be gone. And I was like, I'll tell you what, I'm going to call you back. Is it okay if I call you back in 6 months? He's like, my mind's not going to change. I'm like, yeah, but you won't be there.
Well, look, not because of him, but I think Circuit City, didn't they go bankrupt?
Yeah. And they went bankrupt like 4 months later. And I was just salty because he'd been so rude to me. But I was just like, I walked around the office for like 6 months, like, I told him, and everyone's like, shut up.
But people thought the internet was a fad. They thought it was gonna go. Actually, funny is Netflix. So I was doing business development, selling online ads, basically, and partnerships. One of them was Netflix. When Netflix had just started. Was not a public company, had just started. They were sending out DVDs. Like it wasn't streaming. This was later. So they wanted to basically get on our website and like have conversions. So people sign up. They were like 1 month trial for Netflix. And so I remember speaking to the person who was like heading up advertising on their end. And, he's like, I'm getting some stock options. And I actually ended up buying, when they went public, because I knew about them, I bought Netflix shares like for like nothing, and then they went up and I sold them. But had I kept, they morphed into, anyway, this was years ago. But my point is, the internet was a disruptor. So that was interesting. That company, Community Connect, was sold. I joined another company called Select Minds that was actually a B2B SaaS play. So doing we started out like alumni programs, like outsource alumni programs for companies. So we had, big companies like the big consulting firms, EY, PwC, and then I was trying to break into the legal market vertical. And so then, that company expanded and ended up ultimately being sold to Oracle. So I went back to law firm world though. Actually, when I was at Select Minds, we were at a conference, I discovered that law firms have business development people, big global law firms have business development people who help partners sell legal services. And then I ended up joining a big global law firm. I had to move to DC from New York, which was a great experience. Came back up to New York. So I worked at a couple of law firms over the past 12 years. Really great experience, not practicing, but on the business side of it, strategy, business development, got to learn about all different areas of the law. So intellectual property, which I had background in when I was an attorney lawyer, but then also litigation, energy, we have public policy, lobbying practices, healthcare, so different verticals, and just like the legal issues around those verticals or sectors. And it was really great experience. Now, let me get to the punchline and I don't tell you all this stuff, but how do I get into investing? So when I was at a law firm, I was home one day and I was watching this program, CNN, Solana O'Brien, Black in America. And she basically she did it, I guess, every week on the Black American experience in America, featuring different topics. So that week she was featuring entrepreneurship, and she had a group of entrepreneurs that she was highlighting. They were part of an accelerator program. They were out in San Francisco. And during that show, she said a stat that I did not know. And mind you, I'd worked at 3 startups. We were all venture backed, 2 had exits. I didn't know. I mean, I knew it was hard to raise money, but I'm like, okay, you have a good idea. You can raise money. She said that less than 1% of VC dollars went to Black founders. And I'm like, stop. Like I was doing laundry, I remember. And I literally was like, what? I couldn't believe that. And then I did research, and in fact, that was in fact true. And at that moment, I just said, I want to change that. Like I thought that was just crazy. And so I said, I'm going to change that. Okay. I don't know how I was going to change it. I just said I wanted to change that. I'd never invested. I worked at startups, but I never invested. I didn't know how to invest. I was an angel investor. I wasn't a VC. So fast forward 3 weeks later, the universe conspires, I said, because there was a newsletter I would get called Daily Worth. It's no longer around, but it's like for women and giving about financial issues or financial information for women. And in that newsletter I got one day, 3 weeks later, they talked about a program called Pipeline Angels. And basically it was a boot camp to teach women like how to angel invest, how to invest their money in startups that they want. And the whole idea is like, if you had more women, so women, by the way, it's not that great for women either in terms of women-led companies getting funding. So the whole idea is if we had more women, like women investors, more women-led companies are going to funding. The founder, Natalia, also, she's Latina. She also wanted to get Black and brown women involved. So I applied, I got in, and that was a decade ago, 10 years ago, exactly. And I was still at the law firm. I went through the program 6 months. 6 months later, I made my first investment, and I started invested in 5 companies with my own money. After that, but we had a cohort, like we would do due diligence together. We each had like our superpower, our background, like our expertise, and I just loved it. Then I realized very quickly, angel investing, on average, you need to invest in 25, 30 companies to have a return. And that gets to be really expensive. You're writing between $10,000 to $25,000 checks. That's like, multiply that by 30. That's a lot. So one of my friends from my cohort, Pipeline Angels, told me about Portfolia. It had just launched. She was affiliated with them. She's like, this is a great model. You can invest, minimum investment is $10,000. You'll have exposure to 10 to 12 companies. Think of it like a mutual fund. And then I'm one of the lead partners who are looking for the companies. You can come to the pitch calls. You can listen in. You can say, hey, I want to be part of due diligence team. I was like, wow, this is a really great model. Like, I can write $10,000 check, and then I can have exposure to, multiple companies, not just one company. And then I'll be part of a community of other people. And it's fun. And I said, this is the way I want to do this, because it's like, this is just a better model. So
just a question quick. Twice now I've heard you mention the concept of community. We were angel investors. We were all doing due diligence together because we were part of a cohort. The Portfolia is, part of a community. How important is it to have a community when you're investing of investors for you to talk to?
It's so important. I mean, it's important having a community in terms of getting investors, limited partners. So if people don't know what that is, those are people who invest in, in funds that then go out. The people who run the funds, like general partners, like myself, will go out and then invest in companies. Community is really important. Community also to find great companies. You want to find the best startups, and people to this day, I get people say, hey, take a look at the startup. Like yesterday, a good friend of mine texted, like, take a look at the startup. Or other investors I know, take a look at the startup. We think this is a great company. We're investing, take a look at it. So community is really important. Earlier today, I was, there's a group of women. A woman created something called How Women Invest. And it's a community, again, of like women who are successful. And they say, we want to use our money to invest in a fund that How Women Invest has created so they can invest in women-led companies. And for Black History Month, we talked about it was basically a panel of Black founders and Black VCs, and I was a part of that. So again, this is like a community. And so there was like 70 people on that. And so, being in VC, being a startup, it's really important to be, community. But that's like, I think that's true of any industry, really. I mean, not just VC. If you think of any industry, I think it's important to have a community, but definitely it's important for VC startup world.
And it's a group of people who all understand the pain, the unique pain of whatever you're doing. When I was in consulting, granted, half of it was that we were away from our family for 5 days out of the week.
Right.
Just these people. These people became like family because you ate together, you drank together, you woke up and you went to work and you worked, well, in consulting, it's 14 hours a day.
Right.
So 14 hours a day.
Law firm, it's legal world, the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a roommate who got a job, or I don't know, was it an internship, or she got that, whatever, that first entry level at Cravath. And she came home crying. And I'm like, why are you crying? You just got the job of your dreams. And she's like, they gave me a blanket. I'm like, so they're giving you swag. That's cool. She's like, no, they told me to leave it in the office because I wouldn't be going home.
Yeah. No, definitely all-nighters. Like, people sleeping for a couple hours underneath their desk. Yeah.
So, so you evolved into this investor, and one of the things from talking about investors, I find investing and running a fund or running an investment portfolio of your own, you have to have your own thesis, and basing that off of some type of massive transformational purpose is where I find the majority of the investors to be successful. I would like to, I'd like to dip my beak. I'd like to just get on the cap table. It's not a massive transformational purpose, but I would like to find the best Internet of Things startups and enfranchise them. I think the future of work is going to change significantly, and I want to get a piece of that action, some type of MTP like that. And that's where I see a lot of the success comes in. What would you say your MTP, your massive transformational purpose in terms of your investment thesis?
So, no, that's a great question. I think, just back to the question you asked me and how I got into investing, it was, just this realization of that VC is a huge industry, and yet only a certain group of people are getting venture capital in this country. And it's probably the same in other countries. I mean, it's, if you go to other countries, same thing. And just for me, the transformational thing, or just what I wanted to, the problem I wanted to solve is to, get capital to founders who typically don't get it. And so I'll give them a shot at, obviously venture is not, there's so many companies that are venture backable. And even if you're a white male, or regardless your skin color, your race, whatever, like just that asset class, like a lot of companies are not going to get, most companies aren't going to get, are venture backable, and they're not going to get venture. But even if you're a founder of color or you're a woman, it's it's pretty nearly almost impossible. And I wanted to change that. And so for me, I tell people I truly believe and in my investment career, it's been proven, that talent is equally distributed, opportunity is not. And so most Black and brown founders, a lot of women, don't know VCs or have not, they may be the first one that ever went to college in their family, first generation college. They could be, immigrants or first generation from immigrants. And so that's not their world. And so the VC is a club, and most people in VC don't look like me. They're not women. And so that was my transformational, like, here's this problem, I want to solve it. And fortunately, I connected with Portfolia. And what I didn't tell you is, like, I invested in like 2 of their funds, but I wasn't like a lead partner. And then, through I saw the founders, I said, I want to do a fund for focus on investing in diverse like companies. So like do it with Portfolia. And that's been, that's kind of 2 funds. But so that was ultimately the transformation. Like I want to transform, or just transform or help founders, underrepresented founders, women, LGBTQ-led companies, founders get access to capital. If they have a great idea and they're good, I want them to be able to get access to capital. And so that's the mission I'm on. I'm pleased to say, one of the things is when I started 10 years ago, there weren't a lot of people that looked like me. Now there's a lot more, and it's a testament to people creating groups to train people. There's a lot more women who are angel investors, a lot more Blacks. There's also a lot of more emerging fund managers who have venture funds. Again, as hard it is for founders of color, underrepresented founders to get funding, it is probably 10 times harder for fund managers that look like me to get funding. And so that's another thing. But you can't, what I say is we have to like flash that, put a spotlight on that issue, but we can't let it discourage us or prevent us from doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I was at an event and we were having a discussion about DEI, diversity in tech, and I put there's something I feel very strong, having worked in consulting, having been a consigliere at the Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies, having run 5 of my own businesses. The common thread that I found is that diverse viewpoints are where the gold is. And it's not a DEI issue. It's not an impact issue. And it drives me bonkers when people talk about it from well, it's the right thing to do. Well, yeah, but this is a capitalist society. Where's the ROI? And the fact of the matter is that the ROI is there. Like, you get better ROI with diverse viewpoints.
Absolutely. I mean, endless. Yeah, I know. I'm preaching to the choir with you. Endless studies have shown that having, and diversity, by the way, people immediately like knee-jerk reaction is like racial diversity or gender. I mean, diversity can come in all kinds of shapes and form. Could be first generation going to college, right? It could be, it could be it's like someone who
from a historically poor, all white, historically poor neighborhood, and you're the first person to break out. That's just as diverse of a viewpoint. One of the things I was saying is I feel like it's a fiduciary responsibility of a manager of a division, of the CEO of a company, to find and empower diverse viewpoints so you can extract that gold out of that team. And if they're not doing that, then they're not doing their job. And that felt like a wet fart in church.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, everybody at that meeting, at that event, was very like, okay, let's move on to the next topic. I'm like, no, like, seriously, like, the manager should be fired if their team is a monoculture team, because you're giving up value that is there for the taking.
Absolutely. And particularly certain industries. I mean, if you're like a consumer company like P&G, I know someone who works in the P&G, their venture arm, and they are like looking to invest in they know that America is becoming a majority minority by like, I think it's like, what did they say, 2046, some people say 2046, 2050, but soon. And so P&G, they're a consumer products company, and if America it's changing demographics, and yet if you look at your leadership, if you look at and if it's not representative, you're going to have a blind spot, and you're going to miss out on market opportunities. You're going to have competitors coming in, and they're going to take your market share. And so people should be doing it because it's the right thing to do. But like, the reality is, like you said, we live in a capitalist society. And so if they don't want to do it because of that, what about like, okay, they want to make more money. You want to keep your company going. You want to make more money because the country is changing. And so either get on board the train or you're going to be left at the station. And so, I think particularly certain industries are going to be more impacted than others. But, to me, it's like it's a no-brainer to me.
So let's talk about personal motivation. One of the things I find having been multi entrepreneur, multiple businesses started. And I remember, and I knew this, but I thought at the time it was just because I was crap at my job. And that was how hard it is to be an entrepreneur and how hard it is to go against the grain. When that .com is a fad thing was happening, I'm like, no, .com is the future. And like, yeah, whatever, dude. And then when I was like, social is going to be the next big thing. Social, stop talking social to me, Devin. And now, it's, distributed apps and blockchain. And it's like, it's all a scam. It's not. Maybe they don't have the right use case, but, and AI, well, that's sci-fi. People keep telling you no, keep telling you it's wrong, keep telling you, shut up, man. Can we just talk about business? Can you just stay focused? Like, talking about this thing that doesn't matter. How do you stay motivated when the world is cold out there and you're in your warm bed and you could just snooze until 10 a.m.? How do you throw the covers off and just go seize the world? What motivates you to do that?
I mean, I tell people, I think the next, we went through a civil rights movement, which we're still going through, like, it hasn't Yeah, there's still a lot of civil
Hasn't
rights.
succeeded yet. It's not done.
No,
We're in a post-race world. No, we're not, man.
I mean, particularly now, and they're banning books and history and all that.
Yeah.
You know, there's a social civil rights, right? You know, and I think everyone has a place, and you know, I am all for that, and I've, you know, have been a part of that. But I think the next big social civil rights movement is going to be an economic one. There's a massive wealth disparity in this country. I think something like, I saw a stat, Living Cities, which is a consortium of the largest nonprofits. You know, I know those folks really well. They put out a report on Black wealth. And I think they said something like, I think it was, and then a New York Times put out an article, I think something like the average net worth for a Black person in this country is something like $8. I mean, it was under $100. And so, I mean, that's just crazy to me. And it's widening. And you mentioned AI. AI is going to make that gap even wider. I mean, you know, technology has already made it wide. And AI now, you've got ChatGPT and like, you know, Google coming out with their competitor. I mean, this stuff it's crazy. I mean, it's going to wipe out some people. I was reading 80 million jobs. And you know who's going to get affected most by that are going to be a lot of people of color. And so, but anyway, what motivates me is to narrow this wealth divide and to me, I think one of the fastest ways to do that is through entrepreneurship. If you think about, you know, and if you go back like in history and time, you had like Black business, that did well. Even in Harlem where I grew up, you know, there were Black businesses that did well. You know, obviously not everyone had it, but there were Black businesses, people would, you know, frequent them, you know, lifestyle businesses. It doesn't have to be like, you know, most of the businesses in our country are not like these, you know, venture backable companies. They're like family businesses.
And they're still valid businesses.
Oh no, I mean, they've created wealth and for, you know, not all of them, but no, it doesn't have to be like you know, a Google or Apple or an Uber. But these are like businesses that, you know, are sustaining people. They can make a living. They have employees. And to me, that's the way you can narrow the wealth disparity. And so that's what I'm really focused on. And like I said, I think the next civil rights movement, or part of it will be, I think, one, looking at the economic empowerment, empowering, you know, the empowerment. And, you know, Black Americans who, you know, are descendants of slaves, really don't have equal footing. I don't care what anyone says. And there's discussion about reparations. I know a lot of people don't like that. Certain types of people don't like that. But if you really look at it, like, I mean, if you think about in history, and this is why it's just like crazy to me that they're trying to erase history, because, you know, you have people who went to go fight in World War II. And when they came back, they were not allowed to they had the GI Bill that gave home, you know, got a low or no interest loan to buy a home. Black who fought in the war were not allowed to get a GI Joe loan.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yes, having a home is one of the ways for wealth. And so, I mean, so we got to go back and look at these things, but they want to erase like history, but no, the history is there.
I mean, my family would look fundamentally different if my grandfather flew B-17 during World War II. He was one of the first Puerto Rican pilots in the Air Force, and he got shot down over Germany, and he was a POW for most of the war. And he came back, got a GI Bill, went to NYU, got his undergrad, stayed, got his graduate degree, and then became a professor of marketing at University. I did marketing for a long time. Then I became professor of marketing at University of Puerto Rico. My whole upbringing, my whole way of living would have been completely different if that had never happened. I would probably, growing up on the island, probably would have a much smaller worldview. And it's like people don't understand, like that one touch point fundamentally changes an entire trajectory of a family, and you didn't have it. You know, that's
so the Black soldier who fought for his country comes back, and your uncle is given you know, and rightfully so, he was entitled to that. I'm not, you know, it's not taking away from anyone. It's just saying, why not a Black soldier have the same opportunity? And they didn't. So, you know, so we have to look at these things. And so basically we're not starting out on equal footing. And so there is, you know, and so once again, as an entrepreneur, Black entrepreneur or Latino entrepreneur or woman, you know, just again, not having the same opportunity that others have. And, you know, that's all that's, I think I want everyone to have an equal, like to start out the same, like if you think about a race, like the starting line is the same for everyone. You know, obviously not everyone's gonna, you know, not everyone may finish the race. Not everyone is gonna, you know, come in first, second, or third place, you know, but like, at least can we all start out on the same starting line?
Yeah.
But we can't. Like, I mean, I'm going to be starting probably, you know, 200 meters behind versus like, you know, a white guy. But
so, there's that great image of three people trying to watch a baseball game over a fence. And
I've seen that.
I can't remember what the actual title was, but basically equality is everybody gets the same size stool, and there's the different word means everyone gets the right stool, so they all get the same ability to look over the fence. And I was like, that's such an amazing visual that just clearly articulates that, you know, like, or like the other one I thought that was really, really helpful was they had a whole set of people, and there was going to be a race across the football field, and they had everybody take a step forward if you had this, take a step forward if you had this, take a step forward if you had this, take a step backwards if you had this, and then now start the race. And the African American man is like 50, 100 feet back from everybody else, and he still beat everybody. And I was like, I'm sure they didn't count on that, but it was such a great image. He had to run 10 times faster in order to get across the finish line, and all you would see if you took the photo of that finish line was that he just beat this white dude. He started 100 feet back, and he still beat him. And it's like, you know, it was a really interesting. So when you're making the case for this, you know, who do you consider your customers? Are they your LPs, or do you consider your customers to be your startups? Who do you think of when you're thinking about how do I sell this message?
No, I mean, I think my customers are my LPs, limited partners, the investors in the fund. Because ultimately, I can't have a fund without having raised money from LPs. And then, you know, I guess the next step is I raise the money, and then I go out and deploy the capital, and I find great entrepreneurs. You know, I also have to sell the fund to the entrepreneurs. Like, why should they let me invest in them? And so, you know, what I can bring to the table, whether it's like not just financial capital, but my social and human capital. So connecting them to people, or if I have an expertise, helping them, you know, to succeed. But then ultimately, you know, really, you know, my investors, it's like they invested in me. It's like I'm focused on how can I get them a return on their money. And so it's all about performance.
So how do you make the case to them, to the LPs? Then what are they looking for from an emotional standpoint and from a logical standpoint? What do they want and what do they need when they're investing in your?
Well, it depends. I mean, some LPs invest for different reasons. So individuals, you know, for my portfolio funds 1 and 2, we received a lot of funding. Most of our funders, people invested, were women. I'd say 90% were women. And, you know, they believed in the mission. You know, they've made money. They're all accredited investors, which is defined by the SEC. You know, you have a certain amount of either income or net worth. And we also got funding from like people who have family offices. So a lot of them, they really knew that there's inequities, and they, you know, also believe that, you know, founders who are underrepresented, you know, can work hard, and giving them an opportunity. So yeah, that, I mean, of course, everyone wants a return. And so that was also what they were driven by. When you turn to like more quote unquote institutional investors, for people who don't know what that is, those are institutional investors could be banks, could be insurance companies, organizations or fund of funds who invest in other funds. They get to write like much larger checks, anywhere from like 1 million to could be 10 million, depending on the size of the fund. So they're looking for, they want to return their investment. They want to diversify the type of fund managers they're investing in. What I would say is some of them want entry into maybe like a family office, may not have a network into like these communities or like underrepresented founders. And so through us, we're able, like through a fund like my fund, able to provide them with access to that. So that could be also, something else. So, but I mean, fundamentally, everyone wants a return, some type of return, but then, but part of their thesis could be, they really want to invest in, diversity, gender equality is important. So they identify funds that are focusing on that. So it could be all over the map. And the point is, like, as a fund manager, you need to find, like a founder, you need to find the right investors that are, that understand what you're doing. I'm not going to say, well, you should, and I've actually had people say to me, you should just invest in the best founders. Like, why are you just investing in underrepresented founders? Just invest in best founders. What they're saying, if you read in between the lines, is that underrepresented founders, women, people of color, aren't necessarily the best founders, which is, actually, I don't believe that. I actually think that those are some of the best founders because they have to be incredibly capital efficient because they don't get a lot of money. And so, and at least studies have shown that, these founders actually, for every dollar they get, they've been able to, maybe generate $1.75 for the VC dollars or more. So.
I don't know if they were the first to do it, but God bless First Round Capital. When they came out with that analysis,
it was like about 8 years ago. Yeah,
female founders provided a better return on investment. The argument was done. You can't argue with, like, they exhaust. I mean, yes, I hear you. But it's like,
done, but I don't know how many people listened, right? So,
well, I had an old partner of mine who used to talk about value blindness, and I thought it was such a great term because it's not necessarily willful ignorance. It's not necessarily misogyny or racism. It's a blindness to the value that comes from how you were brought up and your life experiences. So you might be the best person in the world, but you have a blindness, and just like color blindness, there's very little you can do with it. Now, from an investment standpoint, because I don't have value blindness, if investor A has value blindness, I'm going to get that return on investment. I'm going to get on that cap table that this investor won't, and I'm going to get that opportunity that this investor will not get. And,
I have an example. One of our portfolio companies, Canella Media. Let me tell you this story. It's really interesting. So she's, this wasn't her first rodeo. She, successful entrepreneur, had 2 companies prior in the ad tech space, delivering ads. And she noticed that there's an unaddressed market, the Latinx streaming service market, but they didn't have to pay. So you have Netflix, you have Prime, but you need a credit card, right? So, but this is like ad supported, targeting, just Spanish language. So we have a lot of immigrants who've come over to the United States. She started out rolling out what she was doing initially in the United States and was going to expand it throughout Latin America, South America. So we invested in her now about 2.5 years ago. Literally, she went to, and it's an article in Forbes, she went to 100 VCs, Sand Hill VCs in New York. She's based in New York, and again, she's a, successful entrepreneur, not her first rodeo. She basically said, everyone said no. The only people who invested in her seed round were funds that were led by women or diverse funds. So we invested, we got in at an incredible valuation. COVID hit. Well, we actually invested during COVID. COVID accelerated her because people are at home. She has big advertisers like McDonald's, Toyota, Samsung, she has gone on to, last summer, she raised $32 million Series A, one of the most the woman has ever raised. When she went to go pitch the VCs, they said, like, Latino people can just look at Netflix or, Amazon. They had that value blindness, you called it. They had a blind spot because the problem is there's Latinos, like I don't know the stat. It's like maybe 40 or like there's some people who are underbanked and unbanked. Of those people who are underbanked and unbanked in the United States, 50% are Black or Latino.
Mm.
They don't have a credit card, so they can't get on Netflix. They can't get on Amazon.
That wasn't this investor's experience. So there's
So the thing is, I knew that because we had just invested in a company called Mochify. It's a digital bank for the under and unbanked. And we knew the stat of like how many, by the way, 70 million people in the United States are underbanked or unbanked, which I was blown away by that. And half of them are Black or Latino. So I knew immediately she is tapping an unaddressed market, giving them, why they should be able to stream, but it's ad supported. We invested, fast forward, she's on her way to be $1 billion company. She already had offers to acquire her, but she's building a multi-billion dollar company. She now employs over 100 people. She's killing it. She launched Canela Sports during the World Cup. She had advertisers killing it. Canela Kids, like the Nickelodeon, but for the Spanish speaking market. She launched in the United States. She launched in Mexico last summer. She was the #1 downloaded app for a full month, beating out Disney Plus. She's launched in Colombia. She's about to launch in Brazil. It'll be Brazil. So my point is, because we are in and of these communities, we understand these are unaddressed markets. We know we don't have that blind spot. All those VCs, she actually turned around, like when she was raising her Series A, she said no to some of them because they weren't there for her. So we got even more allocation and we invested it out of our second fund. So that's an example, a massive market, and like people just don't get it.
Yeah.
That's a lost opportunity.
I restructured my entire way of working with businesses when I'm talking to underrepresented founders to basically say, you're not getting any money. Just start with that assumption. How do you bootstrap this so that with no money, you can still succeed? And then once you're so good, they can't ignore you, then you can decide, then you have the power to decide who to ignore. And, it's the power of dynamic flips because you don't need them. And now you can decide to invest in somebody's fund by bringing your startup there, as opposed to begging somebody for permission to start your business. And they're like, I don't get it. Well, let me tell you, most of the businesses that were started didn't make sense. And if they made sense, 12 other people did it. And if it was sexy, super sexy people started working there and you had to compete with them. The unsexy, confusing ass business model is usually the one that becomes, wait, you want to start a dating app, but all the women have all the power? That doesn't make any sense as a man. I've never been in a relationship like that before.
Humble. Exactly. Yeah.
Who would ever bet against the woman who did all the business development for Tinder? I don't know why you wouldn't bet.
Yeah, right. That's a fascinating story. And she just, last laugh on her, right?
Yeah, exactly.
She had the last laugh, I should say. Yeah, like totally. But yeah.
So how do you structure your fund then? I was talking to Jonathan Akakian, and I was asking, what's one piece of advice you give startup founders? He's like, understand the structure of the funds that you're going after, because how they're structured might mean that they're wrong for you or right for you. Not that they're a bad fund, but maybe they need a return in 5 years and you're not going to be able to give them a return in 10. They're going to say no to you. And if you don't understand that, so how is your fund structured to be valuable to the LP, but as well to the right startup founder?
Well, I mean, I think I would say probably all venture funds, it's this 80-20 rule. So, Peter Thiel is known, I think he came out with a book and he had that, and it's this 80-20 rule for people unfamiliar with it. Basically, if you look at, 20% of the companies that you invest in will, return the fund or generate returns. The other 80% aren't going to, they're not going to probably, they may not, they may go out of business. They're not going to make enough money where they can be sold or whatever. So they're not going to, so we're looking for the 20, we're looking for 20%. So I told you Canela is that one of the 20%, right? She hasn't had an exit yet, but we're pretty convinced she will have an exit, assuming she continues her growth trajectory and all that. So that's what we're on the mission, is to find that. And every fund manager is on a mission to find that. And so, some founders don't get it. They say, oh, I'm generating like $1 million in revenue. Okay, but we want to see that growth. You did year 1 or year 2 or whatever. Like, what's your growth going to be? We want to see 25% growth or more year over year. And if you're not having that growth, doesn't mean that your business is not good. Maybe you're not a venture backable business, and most businesses aren't, and that's okay. And I want to really emphasize that, because I think when people think, oh, I'm going to start a company, I'm going to get some VC money, it's like, you may have a lifestyle business, or you may not have a high growth company, so you shouldn't be going after venture capital.
Yeah, I wasted a year and a half, I would say, like after COVID hit, and then I was like, oh crap, my funding dried up and I need to get new funding. And I beat the drums for a year before I was like, wait a second, I've been telling startups for 5 years, don't ask for permission. And here I am asking for permission. What am I doing? So I just started building it. And lo and behold, I'm going to hit revenue neutral next month, right? But that's because I built it and I didn't wait. I stopped waiting for permission. And whether or not this ever turns into an investable business, it will be a business that supports me and my family for the rest of my life, while making the impact that I want to make on the world. That's good enough. I mean, at the end of the day, I was talking to Clayton Banks, and he was saying, who was the richest person in the world in 1962? I was like, I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows who the richest person was. But who was but everybody knows who Martin Luther King is. Everybody knows who Malcolm X is. Everybody knows who Gandhi is. Think about the impact you make on the world, and less how much money you make. You can make impact with money, but think about the impact you make. And I find asking permission never got me anywhere. Right. Because everybody always had a really good reason why I was too Hispanic, I was too white, I was too male, wasn't male enough, wasn't white enough, wasn't this. Well, there's always a good reason why it was no.
Well,
there's always a very good reason. I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And then afterwards,
there's always going to be a reason. Yeah. But no, I mean, but in terms of like fun VC fund economics, we have to, we got to find this 20% they're going to return the fund plus. And so how funds are set up is, we have investors that invest in the fund, and then VCs, because, we're working, like we're trying to find companies. We have to have a very small team. And so we get a management fee, and that management fee supports us in terms of us, day to day, like, supporting the fund to do what we need to do. And then the upside is that, if a company, so I mentioned Canela Media has an exit, usually it's that we get what you call a carry, 20%, once the fund returns, so when I say return, all the investors are made whole. They get paid back the money that they invested plus some, hopefully, right? And then I can then start, like, so if a company gets sold, the investors take 80%, and then I get 20%. And that's where VCs make the money, is like if they find the right companies and, they sell it, for, 100x, meaning, you put in, whatever, $250,000, but it, 100x value, and then that, whatever that profit is split. And so that's the fund economics. And so founders don't know that. And I mean, they may, but they're, it's like, we do run models to see like how much, first how much we're taking in that terms of equity or investing, or we get in return for the check that we get. We want a certain amount of equity, because as they go further down, you can get diluted. You want to have pro rata rights where you can maintain your equity. You want to set aside follow on, so that the winners like a Canela or some other companies in your portfolio, as they're growing and they're doing well, you can then reinvest so that you keep, like, say you have 2% of that company, you want to keep that, because every funding round you can get diluted. And you were the first ones in. And so there's all these economics, like models and
well, you said something in there that to certainly was a little bit of a throwaway statement, but I want startup founders to hear this, is that, like, you might or might not care about this, and the thing is, you really do, as a startup founder, need to care. One of the major inflection points in my sales career happened when I realized that not every customer is the right customer. Sometimes you need to fire the customer. You need to figure out as quickly as possible when you're wasting your time with that customer, so you can focus your 99 no's on the best most fertile ground, and you're not just spraying and praying across people who don't. You're like, no, dude, I seriously do not need your product. Like, no, please, I have to make quota, and you're just wasting everybody's time. As soon as I flip to consultative selling and being like, okay, let me find the right customers and then help them to get out of the way to take my product in, then my sales career took off. I could sell anything.
Yeah.
Because I'm not selling anything.
Showing people that, and with consultative sales is also people might not know that they have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And you highlight certain things and they're like, oh, wow, you know what? I need to, like, I have this problem, that's the low-hanging fruit is like, they know they have a problem and you're like, okay, I'm the person that we can solve the problem. And there's other people like they can have this problem, but they may not even know they have a problem. And so, by showing them they have a problem and then, and then they adopt your solution. But so, yeah, those are the fund economics. I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't, and it's not that they shouldn't, but that's not, they're not in the business of VC, and it can be a bit complicated and you have to run models and think about, follow on funding and rounds and like not diluting your investment and all these different things. And so, but those are the things that we have to think about and look at as VCs. And so, so this is good that you're having this discussion and hopefully founders will understand that. But again, I want to leave founders with like, you don't necessarily have to be venture backable, or you don't necessarily have to get VC to be successul. A lot of companies aren't. So they could have
one of the things that we did. The pandemic was the epoch of pivots. It was like an entire geological period of time condensed into 2 years. We pivoted 5 times. And like fundamental pivots, not like, what, I think our brand color should be more charcoal, like fundamental pivots in our business model. And one thing that we did is we moved from, we're only going to focus on investable startups, to let's look at the entire life cycle of an entrepreneur, from I'm gig to I want to be a solo entrepreneur, to I want to create a small business, to I want a team of like 10 people. And it's maybe more of a lifestyle business, but to 100, to exponential startup, and then the levels of that. And that unlocked so many entrepreneurs that I was getting, I was dealing with maybe 10, 25 startup founders. I'm now dealing with 1,000.
Wow.
And the scale is fundamentally different, because when you start looking at it from the perspective of, there's so many more entrepreneurs out there. There's a girl in my apartment complex who is she is a nutritionist, and she wants to do meal planning. She runs a business. That's a business. Maybe it's not Bumble, but it's a business. Mm-hmm. And she needs to think through a lot of the same things that Bumble needed to starting out. Maybe she doesn't have a software component, but a lot of the same questions as you get out, like what's the problem you're trying to solve? Who are your customers? What do they want, need? All of that.
How do you read? All of that. And so absolutely. All of those things,
So let me, I've been talking about myself too much. So as I do, at least that's what my wife tells me. But let me ask you, how do you get the word out about like how do you get these people in, whether either from a startup perspective or from the LP perspective? How do you start that relationship? How do you get them? How do you find them? How do you communicate with them? How do you convince them to come into the fold?
It's a great question. I mean, what I'm doing right now, being on this podcast, I think I've been fortunate. I mentioned a decade ago that I started investing, and I've kind of built a brand in the space. And I'm on podcasts. I've been interviewed. I've been in press, and so that part of it is like this public profile, brand building part of it, and then just getting out there. I'm actually going to be going to Dominican Republic in 2 weeks. I was invited by U.S. Embassy for Dominican Republic to speak to a group of investors and entrepreneurs about what is the investing landscape in the United States. They're looking at how they can support their entrepreneurs. They have a lot of entrepreneurs in public, not that you're like, not like big tech companies, but like lifestyle business, like what you're saying, a woman who lives in your building, someone who has a expertise and has a product and service. And so how do they scale that? And part of what I'll talk to them about is not necessarily venture capital, but other funding sources. And so, just all these things. Like, I go and I speak a lot, I meet people, and then hopefully, a lot of times I leave an impression and they believe in what I'm doing. And I do it not necessarily sell myself, but like, I'm part of this mission and this transformation. And so part of it is like, give, get, you go and give, and hopefully, people will see you and then, want to invest. During the pandemic, I spoke at an event. It was on Zoom, and it was like during Black History Month, or maybe it was a little bit after, but it was right after George Floyd, and they wanted to interview me, and it was like a panel of people, and we were talking about like venture and capital and getting capital to, Black founders and Black Founders Matter and that kind of thing. And and then someone was, she happened to be on that, and she ended up, investing in my fund, both my funds, and we become good friends. And so, all of that, it's just, I guess, showing up. I show up. Like, I show up whenever I can. People ask me to do things, obviously, it's a balancing act. You can't say yes to everything, but just being out there, being a thought leader.
But you seem like you do. Like, I mean, I should say you say yes to the right things. I've never seen you at a thing where I'm like, why did she do this? But I can't tell you how many times I see you like, ooh, oh, well, I can't tell you how many people I told that I was interviewing you for the podcast are like, really?
Oh,
wow. Like they know you. And on the flip side, every time I see you and you're like, I was at this or that, you are at more things in a week than I am in a month.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I definitely am very busy. This month is insane for me. But it's all everything I do. It's like, I think about like, is this going towards the goal that I have? And that's like, getting the fundamental goal is like,
absolutely.
And then
I should say, none of the events you've been at where was I like, okay, I guess like they're all really interesting, really valid, like whether or not they're like targeted towards me, it might be like women in investing on how to break in as a woman investor. Well, obviously I'm not going to I might find some gems in there, but most of it's not going to be targeted at me. Yeah. But it's obviously like a really, so let me ask you though, I mean, do you do this on your own? Are you a mighty team of one, or do you have a team?
I have a virtual assistant, which is great. And, as I'm embarking on building, when I was with Portfolia, I have the fun with Portfolia, Portfolia has a team, and they were, great at, social media and getting the word out. But, I'm shifting over to my own fund. Part of it is
Tell us about that. Wait. Don't bury the lead. Tell us about the fund.
Yeah, so I am launching right in the midst of, I retained an attorney. We're going through fund formation. I'm going to launch my own fund. It's going to be called
Amazing News.
Yeah, thank you. And it's it'll be an interesting fund. It's you asked me to talk about like my beginnings, and the name that I chose is going to be related to Harlem, because that's where I came from. And that's my formative years and made me who I am. And, I still actually, I have an apartment in Harlem. I'm still there. And I was actually, walking to the subway to my office today, like getting on to get to my office. And, Harlem is interesting. You've got all kinds of people, and it's become gentrified, but it made me I said, I don't have to live in Harlem, but I chose to live in Harlem because it makes me remember where I come from. And it also makes me remember, as much as Harlem is changing, some say for good, it's changing in a good way. And some are saying no, with gentrification, people being pushed out. But there's still a lot that needs to be done. And I'm reminded of that when I'm in Harlem, that, as much as I left and I had great experiences, I went to like great college and I did all kinds of things, I'm still like, I'm a person from Harlem, and I want to be rid of, the struggles that people still have. And I can easily, kind of be holed up and, not see that. But that to me is really important. So the fund will be a nod to my Harlem roots. I think that Harlem is incredible. If you look at the Harlem Renaissance and the innovation that's created out of Harlem, because out of necessity, people didn't have a lot. And so that's what I want to bring with the fund, is finding entrepreneurs that, see a problem and they have a great, unique solution to it. And I want to fund them. So I'm launching a fund. It'll be similar to, what I did with Portfolia Underrepresented Founders, which, can be women, can be people of color, could be, Indigenous, Native Americans, LGBTQ-led founders, veterans, founders that, don't always get a shot. But yeah,
old ex-professors who now live in Austin.
There you go.
I'm teasing. I'm not trolling for investment, but no, but that's so cool. That is so cool. That's I love that progression, and I'm really excited to see where that goes.
Thank you.
Are you
but to answer your question, with once I do my first close of my fund, I will, part of the plan is to hire 1 or 2 people. Cool. Absolutely. Because I'm only one person, and as much as entrepreneurs have to scale, I have to scale myself, and that's really important.
So if I wanted to work with you, and you were like, oh my God, absolutely, I want Devin to work for me. What would I look like as an applicant? Like, who are you looking for in somebody who is a knock 'em out of the park applicant that you would love to have as to be that 10X employee for you?
Well, first, they have to believe in the mission, right? We have to be like-minded. I don't want someone's going to say, well, we should be investing in the best entrepreneur. Like, just believes in what is passionate about, like what we're trying to do. I want to build, at some point, I know it sounds, but you got to swing for the fences, a multi-billion-dollar asset management firm. So when you look at like the Sequoias of the world, you mentioned first round capital, they had started out with one fund and they grew, right? And so, and it's, creating that fund 1, fund 2, like it's not one fund and done, but it's like one fund and then I'm going to create another fund and then grow, and then succession planning. So, those people I hire, at some point going to pass the reins to them. And so someone who's hardworking, problem solver, analytical, who can think outside of the box, be analytical, and open-minded. So you mentioned like AI, blockchain, Web3. We're going to see companies that may not. I mean, that's the whole point about venture. We're looking for companies that are going to like be killing it 5 years from now, 10 years from now. People believe that there's a market. We want to be ahead of a curve. I talked to you about Netflix. I had no idea Netflix was going to start streaming, because that didn't even exist then. But I knew something was interesting about Netflix. And, the fact that I even left law firm world to go join startups, I said because the internet was going to be a game changer. And I knew that. So I'm good at like, kind of spotting trends and, or just, kind of how they intersect and that kind of thing. And so that's kind of a bit of my superpower. So someone who's like that, who is going to be inquisitive, who's not going to, one of the things about my legal training, which I try to shake all the time, is like legal training teaches you to be risk averse, always find fault. In some ways it's good, because when I do look at a company and I'm always thinking about what could go wrong with this company. That's what I bring to the table. But I also need someone to say, it could go wrong, but Lorine, like, so those are the attributes that I'm looking for. And ultimately just really being passionate about this work that we're doing. And I consider it an honor to be able to do this. I consider it a responsibility, and I consider it my purpose, my why in life. So, and having that ethos.
Yeah. Everybody we hire, either in the apprentice program or in the staff, we look at, do you believe in the mission of Juntobot? And then why? Okay, great. So you believe in the mission of Juntobot. Do you believe in the mission of Juntobot because I have a paycheck for you? Or do you believe in the mission of Juntobot because you have a personal motivation around solving this problem? What is your personal motivation? And 9 out of the 10 people I apply, that's where that interview stops. They're like, I don't know. I just looked at your about page for like 12 seconds and I saw that you had a job opening for me. Like, thank you very much. But it's like everybody that I've hired that has that cares about the mission is still with me.
It's important. Because, you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days. And it's like, at the end of the day, we're like, as a leader, we have to galvanize people to believe in the mission that we have, and want to be on board with it. And I tell that to founders too. It's like, you have to sell. Like, you're like, what? I'm a sales. Yeah, you're selling your employees to get people to come, the best employees you can get, and they're going to come along with you on this ride. You have to sell to your investors, and you have to sell to your customers, and you want to inspire people. And those are the best entrepreneurs. And obviously not everyone is, some are better than others, but they have to do the work. You don't want some entrepreneur that's flying everywhere and speaking at conferences and not like running the company and doing the work. You have to have a balance, right?
I've met a couple of those entrepreneurs. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, don't be Instagram famous. Can you, like, how many sales have you made? They're like, well, I haven't made any, but I was on the XYZ. And you're like,
right. Yeah,
doesn't mean anything, man.
Right. Yeah, it's all a balancing act. Or otherwise, they have like a really strong COO, and I have actually, they're investors in my fund, a husband and wife couple, and they had their first company had an exit. They're now built a new company, and the wife is like, the husband is like the visionary, like like 30,000 foot view, like visionary, like, and she's like, get stuff done. And they both said they would not have been successful. They both, like, it was just him or it was just her.
Yeah.
That together as a team, they each have a superpower and they complement each other. And so, anyway.
Yeah. No, that's incredibly valuable, is to have those. We use Minbassador, and their design thinking concept is around 4 different problem solving types that are on intersection of a wheel. So you have those visionaries, and then you have systems thinkers, and then you have the naysayers. People are like, yeah, this, yes, this, no, and then the executioners. And usually at the intersection between the two, the executioners and the systems thinkers want to kill each other, and the visionaries and the naysayers want to kill each other, because they're at polar opposites. But if you can get those 4 people on a team, you have a very good chance of that, because you've got the person who points the way, you got the person who makes sure you've thought through everything, you got the person who decides what is the right and the wrong things to do, and you got the person who makes sure it gets done.
Yeah, and I think the executor, for a lot of startups or just any businesses, you've got to have all those things. But I think, if you can't find all 4, I would say the visionary person's a visionary, and the person's executor. I do think you need a naysayer, because sometimes people drink their own Kool-Aid, and like, you're like, okay, I need to reel you in, like, so.
Somebody tried to convince me on doing everything as an NFT, and I'm like, okay, I get that's the hot thing now. I'm not sure whether NFTs are the right business model for this, but good on you. And they're like, you just don't understand the vision of Web3. I'm like, I believe in Web3. Not sure NFTs are right.
I'm a big believer in Web3. I just don't think that we found the big use case. But I do think smart contracts, as a former lawyer, I think smart contracts are amazing. And one use case I'll just throw out, Taylor Swift put out her tickets. That was a debacle with Ticketmaster, and then Beyonce now is doing this, but she has, like, you have to register, be a fan, and then there's like so much demand. She added new shows. I said, you know what, like, if they both put out an NFT, and they sell it for whatever, I don't know, $5,000, that would give certain people access, and then let all the other people, like, make it more equal. But NFT, you would have first dibs on getting those concert tickets, because of smart contract. And people don't, if they don't know what an NFT, on the blockchain, if there's certain things are done, that will give them it gives them kind of a token it gives you some privileges, and so I know companies are looking at that, and I've been really, because of my entertainment background, use case around that, and I know people are looking at that, and Live Nation, I think, was looking at NFTs, but I just don't think there's been a home run use case yet. But they're powerful, and the blockchain is immutable. If If you think about voter fraud, we would not have that if we're using blockchain. So there's so many use cases, and blockchain is just really interesting.
It's such a shame that it's been basically interwoven with crypto to the point now that
I know people
it's like, oh, you mean crypto? I'm like, no, man. Like blockchain's like underlying technology, fundamentally different use case.
At the end of the day, it's an underlying technology that crypto sits on top of blockchain. And so anyway, but I mean, you know, it's here.
It's like saying like the internet is a fad because
we're in the very
and you know, and phishing attacks. Like, no, the way, you know, some people are using it incorrectly, but it's still an amazing technology that can transform the world. You know?
Yeah.
So, all right, that's the formal portion of the evening. It's not evening, but let's just call it that. Now onto the fun part, the pay it forward section. You know, I'd love to shine the light on resources that most people might not know about.
Yeah.
What is a program that you know about that you really think is amazing that not enough people know about and should be aware of, either from I want to be an investor to I want to be a startup founder, or some other thing that I'm not thinking of? But what's a program that you think everybody should know about?
Well, I mean, on the investor side, you know, Pipeline Angels is great. You know, if you're a woman or femme, that's a great, you know, training program if you want to learn about angel investing. I was a second class to graduate, and now they've gone on, you know, again, back to the community. Now there's 500 women have gone through that program. And, you know, some are doing some great stuff, fund managers to like writing books. And what I would say, if you're an entrepreneur and, you know, not just starting out, I mean, what I would say, there's a lot of programs, there's a lot of free content, free things that you can do as you're starting out. And so I'd say explore that. I believe, what is it? Brad Feld has, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a course that it's basically like, I think two months. And it's all about like your startup and like, you know, product market fit and how you get investments and all that. You know, there's a lot of what I would say now, there's so much on the internet, there's so much access to stuff. If you're a startup and you have, you know, beyond like, you know, proof of concept, a program that I think is amazing is 43 North. They do their $5 million pitch competition. I've been a judge for the past 6 years. It's a wonderful program. They now get.
Don't you need to move up to Buffalo in January though?
Yeah, but you know what?
If you win, you got to move to Buffalo. I can't remember who's running it. Is it Brad Feld running it?
Colleen Hendinger is the CEO, president now, president CEO.
Yes.
But
I applied 1 year and I didn't win, which might be why I'm throwing shade.
Oh, okay.
So just fair transparency to everyone listening. 43 North is in fact an amazing organization. I'm throwing shade because I did not get in. But the year that I didn't get in, the team that won, then there was like a record snowfall the week they moved in onto campus or onto wherever they moved. And I was like, yes! I was so excited. I was so happy because I lost.
That could have been you, right?
Yeah.
No, seriously, I think, no, I mean, obviously there's a lot of competition, you know, and they narrowed down to 16 companies. That's when I go up and we vet them, you know, down 16 companies, and then they present. And then they changed it this year or last year. Only 5 companies will win. Before it was like they divvied up the $5 million, like one grand prize is $1 million, and then they like one company with $500,000 or whatever. This year, or they've now changed it so that only like 5 companies get $1 million each. And part of it is that you have to move to Buffalo, I believe, for 2 or 3 years. But it's an economic driver for them. It generates jobs, but it's a great. So not only they write a check and you get funding, but they also you get free office space. They have people, investors, people who are business experts come in and really try to set you up for success. One of the companies.
Is it non-dilutive? Is it a prize or is it an investment?
It's an investment. Yeah, it's an investment. But you know, I mean, it's a great investment. They really set success. And one company actually went public 2 years ago. And a number of them have gone on and their valuations are, you know, raised money, and they've had some great companies. I invested in a company that I saw last year through 43 North Share, husband and wife, black founders. They call themselves Airbnb. It's like Airbnb, but for hair. So salon owners may have empty chairs. You know, you have independent stylists then can rent out insurance. So with their shares, they actually did a deal. It took 2-3 years to get this deal with Lloyd's of London. So for the day, so that was the big friction point for salon owners. They're like, we have someone come in and they someone sues, they're going to sue.
Who gets sued?
Yeah, they're using my property, or whatever. So they needed to have professional liability insurance, and they did that with Lloyd's of London. Powerhouse couple, she worked at Oracle, did sales at Oracle, B2B software sales. The husband, they own a hair salon, but he was expert in hair salons, and they saw this need. It's basically a real estate SaaS play. It's a prop tech. You have inventory that's not being used. And salon owners can rent it out for $25, $50, depending on the market. And you have 40% of hairstylists are independent. So it's also, a future of work play meet, prop tech play, so anyway, really, a great company. And then they actually this year, they won 2 years ago, and then they got follow-on funding because of their growth from 43 North. So really great program. So I would say those are the ones that I think people should take a look at.
Okay, cool. And I 100% agree with 43 North. My saltiness of not getting in aside, it is an amazing program. It's one of those things where very rarely in these prize type competitions do you get money that really moves the needle, and it becomes more performative.
Oh, this one, no.
And it's that $1 million fundamentally changes the trajectory of your company. And even if you drop it down to $500,000 or $350,000 or $150,000, those are all transformative amounts of money. Whereas a lot of these prize competitions, it's great, but $10,000 doesn't really move the needle when you think about the amount of work you put in.
And they also provide other things to help you be successful to, really help the company. So so those are my suggestions.
Cool. So as you can tell from my background, it's been carefully curated through the pandemic.
Okay.
I like reading, right? So, and I'm always trying to feed my brain, and if the book isn't blowing my mind, I just move on. I was talking to somebody, we were talking about, if you assume I die at 85, right? I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but let's just say I've got somewhere around 40 years of life, which is 40 times 12 months or 40 times 365 days. How many books? Let's say I can read 52 books in a year, 40 times 52 books. What books do I focus on? And I only try to focus on the ones that blow my mind and really move the needle. And I take it very seriously. I am reading a book and I'm taking notes and I'm trying to figure out how do I pull this into my business plan. And are there any books that you read recently that blew your mind that are fundamentally helping you to rethink your business or rethink what you're doing in the world?
Yeah, so it's a book that I read in the past, and I'm actually rereading it. So it's Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? Reginald Lewis. And so for people who don't know, actually, I think it's the 25th anniversary of the book when he published it. Yeah. He was, pretty remarkable person. Unfortunately, he passed away. But he, business person, was a billionaire. Or he did a LBO, leverage bond, a Beatrice International, this force of nature person. And the whole premise of the book is, he's someone who came from humble background, but he's like, you know what, I can be as successful, as wealthy as a white guy. So why should white guys have all the fun? And interestingly, right before the new year, someone I know connected me to one of his daughters. And I actually met his wife. I was invited to a holiday party about 5 years ago. But anyway, I met with the daughter, and I'm embarking on this new fund on my own. And I told her about the book that her dad wrote. I actually read it when I was in law school. Not that I had so much time on my hands, so I don't know what I was doing reading that book in law school, but I digress. But I read it in law school, and it just really made such a tremendous impact. And basically what the main takeaway is that just do it. Like, you're going to have barriers. People will tell you what you can't do. He never let anyone, like, he just was this remarkable person. He just didn't, like, barriers didn't exist for him. And there's some people who are like that. He was like that. And I felt like I'm embarking on this really going to be a really difficult and hard thing to do. And she suggested, you need to reread the book.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, you're right. So I've been rereading it. And she
said,
it'll
completely hit differently.
Yeah, she said that, and it has.
Everything,
she said, my dad would say to you, if he were to meet you, you got this. You go do it, girl. You got this. And so that was like, just, I read that book, and it was like, in law school, life-changing. And I ended up, going to work for Londell Macmillan, and I was like, and Londell was an epitome. And he actually knew, he knows her mother, and my boss, I ran into him when I was at that Christmas holiday party, and Londell was there, and he was my former boss. And she knows him, and his daughters know him. And so it was like this, and Londell knew her father, and Londell was like completely fearless kind of person, and does, just no boundaries or no, roadblocks. And so I was like, she said, you should reread the book, and I'm doing that now. And so it changed my life when I was in law school, my mindset, and it's making me change my mind, or just having a mindset now.
It's fascinating how like a piece of content like that can fundamentally transform your life. Like somebody dropped a bomb, it just completely changes your life. I met the founding publisher of Wired magazine, and everybody was like, oh, blah blah blah, they're talking to him, and I was like, excuse me, sir, can I just talk to you for a second? He's like, sure, how can I help you? You could tell he was kind of like stranger danger, but he was like, I just want to let you know that you transformed my life. So those who know me and who listen to the podcast and have seen me being interviewed, I used to be homeless. And because my transition from DJ to gainfully employed advertising agency owner was not a smooth one.
Wow.
So, and one of the things that was that inflection point was I picked up I got access to the internet, and I was on AOL, and I found Wired magazine, and I then went and printed this is when it's only online, and I printed the entire copy of Wired magazine, and I had it in my knapsack, and I would read it, and then once a month I would get a free the freelance gig, and I would use their printer to print out Wired magazine and that's what got me on my journey. That's what told me about HTML. That's why I went into Barnes and Noble when they wanted to kick out this smelly homeless dude, and I started reading HTML 4.0 for dummies. It was the transformation of my future. It's like those inflection points.
Yeah.
And I can't believe how cool it must have been to meet his wife and his daughters, and hear them say, he would have said, you've got this, because just meeting this dude was one of the most amazing moments of my life. And you got to hang out and have like,
I mean, unfortunately, I can't meet him because he passed away, but I can meet. I met his wife, and I, most recently, I mean, they were both at the party, but I didn't get to meet his daughter. I saw them, but then someone connected with her recently, and she said to me, reread his book, and I'm doing it. And and just like, to be like fast forward, 20 years later to reread it, and or however long, but it's fueling me as I embark on this journey, which is not going to be an easy one. And again, like, why? And it's actually, why should white guys have all the fun in VC, right?
my wife is a stand-up comedian, and she came back from an open mic once, and she just had this look like, and I'm like, baby, what's wrong? How was the open mic? Open mics, for those who don't know stand-up comedy, is like apparently I've never been to one, is a soul-crushing endeavor. Imagine if you had to apply for your job every day, and every day nobody cared, and you had to do that in public. That's what open mics are. She comes back and she's like, and I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, oh, to have the confidence of a mediocre white man. And that stuck with me, because I was coaching a startup founder who was quite mediocre, but his dad was incredibly rich. And he kept bailing him out when he made stupid mistakes. And that's why I went to go work at City College. I was sick and tired of backing the wrong founders. You know, I don't think it necessarily is a problem of a white founder. It's too many mediocre founders are getting get the covering fire to fail stupidly and not learn from their mistakes, and too many really great founders just because of the color of their skin or their fact that their you know, the sexual organs are on the inside and not the outside, or how they perceive themselves from a gender perspective. Any of that will stop them from being able to take those risks and all that. So
yeah, no, for sure. But again, like what we said, the diversity, it could be like, you know, someone who grew up in a coal town, mining town and coal miners town, and, you know, jobs have left, and, you know, their first generation college, or they put themselves through community college, and they're white, but they grew up in poverty. But there's something like this like, they have this, you know, this
they've got the intelligence,
or they have fire in their belly, right? And so it's just like, you know, let's find entrepreneurs that, and give them a shot, you know. Like I said, like let's my ideal world is like everyone starts out at the same starting line, and not everyone's gonna make it cross the finish line or be successful or whatever, but like at least I'd love for everyone to get a same starting point. And you know, and when that can happen, then we won't need to have like funds that are focused on underrepresented founders or investing in women, or we wouldn't have these conversations. But unfortunately, I don't believe that's not going to happen in my lifetime. I don't think it's for the next.
My argument is not unfortunately, it's fortunately I'm first to the starting line in building the relationships and building the recognition patterns and building the, you know, and building the coping mechanisms to support different teams. All of those tools, I'm 5 years ahead of most people. I mean, not most people who've been doing this work, but most people when you look at the general, and when they finally get the message and they're like, let's do this. Sure, let's do this. Let's do this, what I've been doing for 5 years, and good luck learning all of the like horrible mistakes I made, and all of the banging my head against the wall for a year trying to make it do this when it actually needs to be this and all that. You know,
for sure. So,
all right. So one of the things I like to tell all my founders is make sure you're building conduits to feed your brain, so that, you know, you can choose to watch Netflix on a Friday night, but you have a choice between watching Netflix or watching the All In podcast, or listening to a podcast about entrepreneurship or about investment or whatever it might be. What are your newsletters or YouTube channels or podcasts or TikTok stars? Who's your conduit? Who do you follow?
So podcasts, my favorite podcast is My First Million, and it's to Sam Parr and Sean Parvey or Pond. I'm butchering his name, but Sean. And they're both, so I don't know if people know The Hustle. That's actually a really good newsletter. Sam started The Hustle. Basically, you know, it talks about like just things that are going on in the entrepreneur world. It's a great newsletter. He sold it to HubSpot. So he has a podcast, and they go over really interesting business opportunity. It's fascinating. And they'll have some guests. And it's like, whether it's like to get your first, makes you think about like to get your first million users or million in revenue. I'll give an example. They had someone who owns a lot of different types of businesses, and one of them was fireworks. And they interviewed him. And I don't know if you know this, but pretty much he said his business is basically in the red, is not profitable until the 4th of July.
That was, you know, I was on one of the things that got me into entrepreneurship training and support and all that is I was doing stuff for Citibank for a while, and they have a summer camp. Basically, I jokingly say it's summer camp for rich kids, because it was the kids of of high wealth individuals who own their own businesses, and to try to train them on entrepreneurship, how to take over the business, all that. And I sat next to the guy who started, in those of you in New York won't know who this guy is, but there's a series of costume business. There's a costume business that everybody goes to get the Halloween costumes. It's down in the East Village. And he runs that business. And he was saying the challenge we have is exactly the same challenge, is that once a year we make all our money. Like, who's going to dress up like a witch in April?
Right.
You know? Like
that, they have really interesting guests, and then he talks about the industry, but they have also things like, you know, hey, you should, you know, I don't know, these types of businesses, which you don't like, these random businesses which you would never think of, and you know, newsletter. There's a business that is only for, like, you know, trade newsletters, like for people who are, you know, who are, I'm trying to think of, it's like really kind of an obscure. People who transport like refrigeration trucks, like there's a newsletter, or you know, these like obscure, like you don't even think about these industries, but there's people who create newsletters, and they actually are doing, it's like a series of newsletters. They do them for these different like industries, but they've rolled up into one big company. If you're into entrepreneurship, building businesses, or like interesting ideas, it's a really great podcast. They did a segment on you know, basically you know, Dolly Parton, she has like, you know, she's created this brand. I guess she has a place you can go visit. You know, they talked about Elvis Presley, Margaritaville, Jimmy Buffett. Like, I mean, they were just talking about these celebrities who created like these destinations and art, you know, just like, it's just interesting. It's always a really great listen. And so I love that. I love the way they think, their minds think, and they're true entrepreneurs, right? And so, and then How I Built It, Guy Raz on NPR, is phenomenal. I mean, it, like, you know, he interviews all kinds of, he interviewed the founder of Peloton. I remember listening to him like a couple of years ago, and, you know, just how people thought he was crazy. It was like this hardware company. Then he coupled it with, you know, they're obviously not, they're having some issues now, some challenges, but, you know, just incredible. He's a great interviewer, just incredible stories and of people, how they built it. One of my favorites is Uncle Nearest. It's a bourbon company founded by an African-American woman. She has won 4 years in a row, the top bourbon, and she just surpassed 100 million in sales. People have been trying to acquire her. So Uncle Nearest, for people who don't know, Jack Daniels did this, and she wrote about this, and then interviewed his family. And Uncle Nearest was the one who taught Jack Daniels how to distill whiskey. And she went to the family and said, you know, I want to create, you know, this is his legacy. And one of the distillers and her, anyway, long story short, she launched it in Tennessee. She's not from there. She moved there. And she is killing it. She surpassed $100 million in revenue, you know, which is phenomenal. And so anyway, she talked about, that's a great episode of how she built it. As you can imagine, people were embracing, particularly, you know, whiskey and bourbon making is a white male thing. So they didn't embrace her. So really interesting.
Let's cut it. Let's completely forget the fact that the white dude was taught by the black dude all of his knowledge, and then took that and created a multi-billion-dollar organization out of that knowledge. And I guarantee you that guy got no money out of that.
Yeah, no, of course not. She's awesome. Fawn Weaver, and I follow her on Instagram, and she's just inspirational, and she's like kick-ass.
So all right, so we're wrapping this up, but before we go, I need to be completely self-serving and ask you, who is somebody I should interview on this podcast? Who is somebody that you can introduce to me and convince them despite all logic to the contrary, to get on my podcast to be interviewed, that all my audience really should hear from, should know, that you think is just like, wow, what a great person everybody should know about?
So, well, I was going to say Fawn Weaver, but I don't know her, so I can't make an introduction, but she's definitely, you need to follow this woman. She's a force of nature and is killing it. Cool. But I would say my good friend Candace Cook Simmons, she's really interesting. She is a lawyer, and she she had her own law firm representing entrepreneurs, business people. Do you remember the cronut craze? The donut that's like a croissant donut. Dominique Ansel, she represented him, so she was his trademark attorney. So when he came out with that, there was a lot of people like doing ripoffs, and so she went after them, and then she helped him. He opened up a cronut store, cronuts in Asia and in China. So she's she's a lawyer, but also a business person. She, joined kind of a media company, they produce stuff really interesting recently. So she's no longer practicing, but she's doing like their head of strategy officer. Just a really brilliant mind, very strategic, from the legal to business to like technology startup. She's good friends with the guy who started Venmo, Ishmael. They were business partners. So just a really, like around entrepreneurship, business strategy, legal, like all morphed into one like powerhouse person.
So we'll try to find her Twitter or Instagram handle and put it down below for those people who want to follow her. But we'll definitely reach out to her and try to get her on the pod.
Follow me.
Yeah, and we're gonna definitely have Lorine's contact information. So thank you so much for making so much time for us in an incredibly busy schedule as you're trying to raise a fund. I'm trying to raise a Labradoodle. That's the extent of my responsibility at this point in time. So I am completely blown away by your success. I'm really happy for you.
Thank you.
The comment section is turned off on all of the different platforms. However, there is a permalink to the community on Juntobot where there'll be an extended Ask Me Anything. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that Lorine's going to be part of that community. She's not going to be on it 24/7, so she's not going to respond like customer support at an overly funded startup. She will be part of that community. You ask questions. Where did we get it right? Where did we get it wrong? Do you have something you want clarification on? Do you have your own thoughts? Tell us about your own journey if you're breaking into investing or you're thinking about starting a startup. Why do you think your startup should be considered by her? Keep in mind, listen to what she said. All right, don't come out here like with something that doesn't fit her thesis. But that community is there for you guys to have an extended conversation with Lorine, her time permitted. And we look forward to having you on there. And in the meantime, everybody, go make the world 5% better.
There you go. Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Juntobot is a company that focuses on supporting and promoting entrepreneurs regardless of their industry, background, or entrepreneurial phase. We offer e-learning programs to teach skills and prepare future startup founders for the real world. We also host a networking platform where we connect people and entrepreneurs from different industries and communities. Finally, we facilitate an apprentice program where we train individuals and employees in different areas such as marketing. Our goal is to make the world 5% better by enabling entrepreneurs to create businesses for positive impact.